and welcome in here to the Patrick Party on this exciting college football Saturday. Well, we have a lot to cover and break down here on the show this morning. The Pac-12 is back, but remember, it is different this year. Why? Well, of course, you know, COVID, all of the restrictions they're going to have out west, but I think one of the biggest things is that it's not going to be Pac-12 after dark this year. You heard me right. It's going to be Pac-12 after dawn as we welcome you in here to the Patrick Party pregame show. Yes, that's right. We're going to have some games kicking off in this noon time slot. USC, Arizona State, and the LA Coliseum. That's going to be kicking off at noon Eastern time, which is 9 o'clock out in California. So that's just a little bit earlier you have to wake up. A little bit earlier you have to arrive to the stadium. So it's going to be a very different season. I can't imagine going to a college football game at 9 o'clock in the morning, but there's going to be no fans, so we don't have to worry about it. They floated this idea around for a minute, but now we have Pac-12 after dawn. So, welcome into the Patrick Party pregame show. We have a big college football weekend. It's not just the Pac-12 that's back. We got Clemson, Notre Dame, Georgia, Florida. I mean, we have a big day of college football. And for you Auburn Tiger fans, you get to enjoy it after that big win against LSU. You just kind of get to sit home and relax and watch a good college football weekend. Well, let's go ahead and start the show how we always like to, just kind of an update and all of sports throughout the week. Before we obviously just get into college football here on the Patrick Party pregame show, well, we had an election this week, and we still don't really know who won, although it's looking close one way. It's definitely probably not what our nation needed, a really big, ugly fight at the end. But we did have an election, so that's something cool and something that only happens every 4 years here in the United States. In the sports world, the NBA has decided they've targeted that December 22nd date as when they want to start. They'll still have their Christmas Day. It is going to be more of a spread out 72-game season. They normally play 82, so now it'll be 72. The NBA draft is also coming up, and the NFL, they had started to kind of not have as many COVID problems. They're kind of getting in their full regular swing, but we got a lot of COVID craziness here in college football, particularly the Pac-12. We want to talk a little bit about some of their protocols. It's a little weird, but we're definitely going to talk about that. Well, let's go ahead and get on into the program how we always like to. Let's start it off with our Saturday slate. Let's go ahead and get started with Michigan and Indiana. Well, Michigan coming off that loss last week to Michigan State. Definitely not a good loss against your rival, and a rival who had just lost to Rutgers the week before, and only the second game for Mel Tucker in his first year as head coach for the Spartans. So all the Michigan fans are mad at Jim Harbaugh. They want to fire the guy. I mean, they're all upset. They're all complaining. So we'll have to see how this all goes down. And then Indiana, they're 2-0. They went. They've been at home last week, or 2 weeks ago. They were at home. They beat Penn State. You know, the stretch. They finally got that big win. Everyone was really excited. They got ranked real high. I was like, whoa, pump the brakes. I mean, yes, they beat Penn State, but I don't think we need to, we don't need to overreact. Well, they went on and beat Rutgers, which I know you're like, oh, wow, Rutgers. You beat Rutgers. Like, congratulations. Here's a gold star. But, you know, Rutgers had also won, too, against Michigan State. Well, we'll see how this Indiana-Michigan game, it's a big game in Bloomington, a ranked game in Bloomington. You don't get that very often. It'll be on Fox Sports 1, FS1, and this noon time slot. All right, let's go ahead and get to our next game. The big noon game on Fox. You have Arizona State, which I'm surprised Arizona State is not ranked. They're returning some talent, especially that young, now sophomore quarterback, played all last year as a freshman. His big coming out party when they beat the Ducks at home pretty much took Oregon out of that playoff spot last season. And then USC, yet another year, just trying to be good, trying to get back to what they were. They're ranked 20. I guess they just got that because of their name, because I don't think they're returning that much. But it's going to be a big game in the LA Memorial Coliseum. Big noon, the kickoff show that always comes on right after us. Let's see, 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern. They're going to have some shake-up. The majority of their crew, actually I believe all of their crew, is not going to be doing that game because they are all quarantining because of COVID. So the guys that do Fox NFL Sunday will be doing this big noon kickoff. It'll be it was supposed to be in the LA Memorial Coliseum. We'll see what happens Now they've had a whole bunch of crew turnover in this last week. Then in the Big 12 in Darrell K, Texas Memorial Stadium, we've got a Patrick Party from there on ABC to kick off the day. We have West Virginia and the number 22 Texas Longhorns. Texas finally starting to get back. That Big 12, with Iowa State's loss, Texas got that big win, but it kind of hurt. I think the Big 12 in total with, a shot at the playoffs. We'll see how that all goes down. West Virginia kind of been a little bit of everything. We don't really know what we're going to get from Neil Brown's team, but Texas has definitely looked like they've turned over a new leaf, and we're going to see if they can keep that going at home against the Mountaineers. And then a big Big Ten matchup. Maybe not the most exciting, but definitely going to be a hard-nosed physical game in Kinnick Stadium between the Iowa Hawkeyes and the Michigan State Spartans on ESPN right after College Game Day. Michigan State got the big win. Iowa's kind of not really been that great off to a start. I don't even know if they have a win yet, but Michigan State for sure does have a big win against their rivals, the Wolverines, after their win in Week 2. So this is going to be a fun one, definitely a hard-nosed, good-styled Big Ten football game. And then one of the games of the day, you have the number 5 Georgia Bulldogs and the number 8 Florida Gators. And Jacksonville, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Well, maybe not this year because of COVID. Might not be having the party. They might be having as big of a party as we're having right here in this seat this Saturday morning, afternoon. It'll be on the SEC on CBS Game of the Week. Definitely looks like this. I think we can go ahead and call it. I think it's safe to say this is the SEC East Championship game. I don't think anyone else is going to catch the winner of this one, and I don't think the loser will be able to take back over whoever wins. It's going to be a big one. Georgia's won the last few. We'll break it all down all throughout the show by the numbers, the spread, over, under. We're really going to talk about this game a lot. A big game in the SEC today down in Jacksonville. And yes, it is in Jacksonville. If you remember when Texas and Oklahoma played in Dallas, they just still split it 50-50. It was just a lot less people. That is also what they're doing in Jacksonville. Why? Because it would be Georgia's turn. Georgia is the home team this year, so it would go to Athens. Well, the next year it would have to go to Gainesville. Well, hopefully next year we'll be able to go back to, I think, Gainesville's 91,000 stadium they have, full capacity, whereas Athens would get the 20,000 they're doing now, 21,000. So it definitely didn't look, it was like, well, that's not a fair trade-off. They're going to get this huge crowd. We're not going to get really anything. Well, you know what? Let's just keep it in Jacksonville. I know Kirby Smart and maybe some of Dan Mullen have been trying to get that game out of Jacksonville and on a home-and-home because it's a huge recruiting weekend, and you lose that when you go to Jacksonville. I mean, I know it's a cool scene, but it would be big for recruiting if you could have those games at home every other year. Now, it would be hard to go on the road. So, there's trade-offs to all of it. But let's go ahead and keep it going on the Saturday slate. We have Oklahoma State and Kansas State. Oklahoma State coming off their loss to Texas last week. It'll be in Bill Snyder Family Stadium on Fox right after that big noon game on Fox. So it'll be that 4 Eastern, 3 o'clock Central. Kansas State been a little bit everything. They beat Oklahoma. They lost to Arkansas State. They were ranked last week, then they lost. Oklahoma State also lost last week to Texas. So we'll see which one of these teams can get back to their winning ways. Well, maybe not winning ways for some of these teams, but a win. And we'll see how this can go. Oklahoma State still feels like it is probably the Big 12's best shot if they win out to get a playoff spot. If they lose again, it's not looking too hot for that Big 12, and we might be looking at maybe the Pac-12 getting someone in, and definitely probably one conference getting more than one team in. So we're going to see. Maybe we'll get our first 2-loss team in the playoff because, like I said, these conference schedules are quite hard. Then, a big game as we move into our nighttime time slot in Williams-Brice Stadium on ESPN, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central. The number 7 Texas A&M Aggies, who keep on rolling along. Maybe they could potentially get a spot in the playoff, be one of those extra teams. It doesn't look like they'll win the West. They've already lost to Alabama. But if they can win out, they do have a tough game against the Tigers, the last game of the season. Maybe they can get a spot in, even though they didn't win their own division. But hey, we've seen it happen before at Alabama. Now, they're taking on a South Carolina team that you don't really know what you can get. They beat Auburn. They got blown out by LSU. We really just don't know what we're going to get from Ole Miss team. You feel like that defense will be strong. We'll see if they can stop Kellen Mond, who has really taken some steps in his final season. Well, actually, this season doesn't count for player eligibility. So we could see him next season. So, I mean, he'll be like a 5th or what feels like 6-year senior. But we'll see how that all goes down. Maybe he'll want to leave or just be sick of it. So it's going to be a big game. Can South Carolina's offense score points and keep up with that Aggie offense? That is the question we'll try to answer for you. And we'll see, tonight on ESPN. Then the game of the day, the Patrick Party game of the day, you have the number 1 Clemson Tigers against the number 4 Notre Dame Fighting Irish in Notre Dame Stadium. Notre Dame will be wearing those nice, kind of more modern green jerseys to support the Irish on NBC, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. That's where College Game Day is right now. But, of course, the big storyline is Trevor Lawrence will not be playing. Clemson will have their backup quarterback. Clemson, really kind of struggled a little bit with Boston College. We'll see how that ends up going down. We're going to break this game down a lot, so I don't want to get too far into it because we're going to talk about it a lot. And then the Pac-12 is back. This one is after dark. You have ABC Saturday Night Football in Eugene, Oregon. Oh, you have the number 12 Oregon Ducks against the Stanford Cardinals. And Stanford, they haven't had a couple of good teams in a minute. But hey, the trees are coming to fight. The nerds are ready. And I think Oregon's definitely going to bring it. It feels like Oregon's really good. Yet again, of course, they won't have Justin Herbert. He's now in the NFL. We'll be talking a lot about this game. Definitely the premier matchup of the Pac-12 after all of the cancellations the Pac-12 has already had to deal with just before even kicking off and getting off the ground this season. And then our final game of the Saturday slate, we have Tennessee and Arkansas. A big-time game in the SEC, kind of for both of these teams, kind of middle of the pack of the conference. This will be a huge win for either of these two schools. Arkansas just kind of keeping it going, a really exciting season. So it'll be a big one. And then Tennessee, they got to be able to beat these mediocre teams. They've been on a losing streak. They got blown out by Alabama. They got blown out by Georgia. They got blown out by Kentucky. So we're going to see what Tennessee can do. And then Arkansas, can they get a big SEC win at home in Razorback Stadium on the SEC Network Saturday night game? So let's go ahead and get into our Saturday statements. We started this segment a couple weeks ago, and it's been fun, so we're going to keep it going. Let's go ahead and start. We have 3 statements that we like to say that we know will happen this college football Saturday. Let's go ahead and get started with that Clemson-Notre Dame matchup. Well, Clemson does not have their starting quarterback. Trevor Lawrence was the Heisman frontrunner. Will he be when he gets back? We'll see how everybody else does. But I think this is still going to be a very competitive ball game. I know Clemson did not look good last week, but I think this is going to be a fun one. I would really expect this to be very, very tight. I think it's going to be a good atmosphere in South Bend, but I think Notre Dame will have the lead going into the fourth quarter. I think Notre Dame will have the lead, and it's going to come down to if Clemson's quarterback and if that Clemson offense can come back and get a win in South Bend that could punch their ticket, what seems like, well, it would probably punch their ticket to the ACC championship game. They'd probably make it there regardless, but definitely to the college football playoff. So I think Clemson will have the lead going into the fourth quarter. We'll see how that game gets out. Of course, we'll make our picks live. We forgot to tell you that. We're going to make our picks live here on the Patrick Party pregame show in just 1 minute. Statement number 2, that Georgia-Florida game. If Florida scores over 20 points, they will win in Jacksonville today. Stetson Bennett, what seems like ever since that Auburn game, which they even didn't score that many points then, they have not been that good. We're going to see if they can really turn around. They scored 14 points on the road at Kentucky last week. Kentucky has an all-right defense, but, Kentucky just stunk more on offense. Now, Georgia has that strong defense, so it's going to be a tough task for Kyle Trask. But if Florida scores over 20 points, they will win in Jacksonville today. And statement number 3, out west, I think that Arizona State could have a really big season. I would not expect that Arizona State game against USC to be very close at all. I think that will not be very close. USC is favored. We're going to talk about that. But I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to pick them. I pick Arizona State outright. I think it's going to be a little bit of a blowout, I think, in LA Coliseum. I think people will really start getting mad about USC, their whole coaching position. So expect Arizona State to come out on fire. They are, in fact, the Sun Devils. They should be on fire. Okay, well, that's going to do it for our Saturday statements. And now the segment that we just want to get rid of. I just want it to be over. I never want to do this segment again, but we have to because you can't ignore it. COVID craziness, everybody. We had craziness this week. Of course, we had craziness last week that affected this week. That's right, Trevor Lawrence still out, and it's not because of COVID. What? I thought this was COVID craziness. Well, listen to this. So the ACC has a 10-day protocol. He would have been eligible for today. But due to some practicing and I'm going to go blank on the name. There's a certain heart condition that he has to pass all these tests to make sure that his heart's going to be okay after he had COVID. And the tests are going to take longer than the 10 days, so he will be on the sideline tonight. He does not have COVID-19. It's over. He doesn't have it anymore. But he is going to have to be sitting on the sidelines because of, they're just waiting for some results in a heart condition, test. So he will be on the sidelines helping to try and coach up the Tigers, but he will not be playing tonight. And then we had some COVID craziness. Let's go ahead. Let's just talk about the Wisconsin situation while we're still out here. So Wisconsin, they didn't play last week. It was looking bad. That whole state is actually having a current outbreak right now. We're going to see what can happen there. But they are going to probably have to cancel this. Well, they did cancel this week. They're going to have to probably cancel next week. So it is just not looking good for Wisconsin. If they don't play next week, they're not even eligible for their conference championship game. So it's getting ugly for the Badgers. And then, if you keep waiting out, how long is too long? You know what I'm saying? If you've been out for 4 weeks, I feel like you need more than 1 week of practice. Is it becoming not safe to try to come back and play? I don't know. We're going to see what happens here with Wisconsin, but they're not playing Purdue today. That game has been canceled, and that is the key word, canceled. They won't be playing at all. So, very bizarre for sure. Then, none of the service academies are playing. You have Air Force and Army. That game has been postponed. And Navy against Tulsa. Tulsa's had a whole bunch of COVID problems. That game's been postponed. But the craziest thing of it all is the Pac-12. Let's go ahead and talk. Arizona and Utah and the Washington-Cal game have both been canceled. Not playing, not happening. Why? One player on both. I believe there's one Cal player. No. There was one Utah player that tested positive for COVID-19. They canceled the entire game because of one player. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's what happened. Washington, Cal, I believe they had a handful of players. They said they deemed it couldn't be a competitive team, so that game has been canceled. So that is our COVID craziness for today. Hopefully next week we will not have any, but we'll see how things keep going. So that's going to do it for COVID craziness for this week. Now let's move on to the spread. A little bit more exciting here on the Patrick Party pregame show. Let's go ahead and talk first about that USC-Arizona State matchup. Well, I was talking about it earlier in Saturday Statements. I think I'm definitely picking Arizona State. I'm picking them outright, but I'm definitely picking them to at least be closer than a 10.5 point game. I know USC's ranked. I know the media loves them because it's USC. But no, USC has not been good in a hot minute. So I think Arizona State will make that conference championship game, and I think an Arizona State-Oregon game will be a big-time showdown. I don't know if they play in the regular season, but definitely in that Pac-12 championship game, which I believe will still be in Santa Clara, California, where the 49ers play in Levi Stadium. So I'm going to take Arizona State in this one. I expect a big season from the Herm Edwards and the Sun Devils, which I thought was a bizarre hire, by the way. I was like, what? Herm Edwards? You hired him? Have you lost your mind? No, it has been great, and I think the Sun Devils will have a big season. Next up on the spread, we have Clemson, a 6-point favorite over Notre Dame. Well, I think this one's going to be very tight. I think Clemson's going to have a come-from-behind win. If they do, in fact, get the win, this is going to be a big game for Ian Book. Just really solidify himself as an elite quarterback, not really one of the average ones. I'm going to take Notre Dame in this one. I'm not going to take them outright. Well, we'll see my pick later in the programming. But I think it's going to be a very close ball game. I think if Clemson wins, it's a come-from-behind win, and it is going to be very close. Maybe they win by a field goal. Then we have Oregon-Stanford tonight. Oregon, an 8.5-point favorite over Stanford. I think Stanford's a respectable football team. Oregon has some turnover, especially that offensive line. Oregon had pretty much all seniors on that offensive line last year. They're going to have to replace the offensive line. So I think this game can be close, but I think Oregon pulls away late. I'm going to take the Ducks on this one. The Ducks, 8.5-point favorites. I think they'll win by more than that. And then a fun one that I'm actually very surprised about. I'm not surprised. I understand. So you might be thinking, Virginia Tech and Liberty, what? Liberty's ranked, people. Liberty's undefeated. Hugh Freeze's team is ranked and undefeated. And they go to take on the road, Virginia Tech, the Hokies. This is going to be a big game for Justin Fuente, as a head coach. Can't lose to Liberty. Virginia Tech, 16.5-point favorites. I don't know if I'm going to pick the Liberty Eagles in this one. The Liberty Flames, my bad. The Liberty Flames. Their mascot's an eagle. Who knows? But I think I'm going to take Liberty. I don't know if they'll win outright, but I'm going to take Liberty. I think this could be a close game. I think Liberty's a good football team. This would definitely give them a lot of momentum going in. Heck, maybe they'll be the group of 5 team. I mean, I'm thinking we're pretty confident it's going to be BYU. BYU only has one game. They blew out Boise State last week. But hey, I think Liberty could get a big program-defining win. Let's go ahead and get into our top 25 breakdown here on the Patrick Party pregame show. Well, we had a lot of movement in the polls. You know what? We're not even going to hype it up. Let's just go ahead and show you. So, here it is. Clemson remains number 1, but of course, we're all waiting. A lot of people thought, Clemson didn't look that good last week. Maybe they'll flip out Alabama for them. No. Let's just wait. If Clemson wins this week, they deserve to be the number 1 best team in the country. If they lose, they won't be. So we're just going to find it out this week. We're going to let the players decide this one on the field. Alabama remains in the number 2. Alabama has looked strong. They keep beating teams pretty bad, and they just continue to look dominant. Definitely an elite offense led by Mac Jones. Then you have the Ohio State Buckeyes followed by Notre Dame. Notre Dame, I bet they'll get ranked they're already ranked really high. They're number 4, let's be real. But they could get ranked really high, especially if they can beat Clemson at home. Now, how far could Clemson fall if Clemson loses? Because they don't have Trevor Lawrence. So I think it's definitely something to consider. Would they drop them that much? And how far would they move Notre Dame up? I feel like if Notre Dame loses, they'll drop way down because you lost without Trevor Lawrence. But if they win, it's like, well, they didn't have Trevor Lawrence. Does this really count? So it's kind of a weird position for Notre Dame. Then you have Georgia in the 5, Cincinnati all the way up to the 6. That's right, the highest group of 5 ranked team, the leader of the American Conference, number 6 in the country. Followed by Texas A&M in the 7, Florida in the 8, which will have some postponements. Dan Mullen was fined $25,000. I know Florida at least has 3 postponements. I don't have that many updates on that situation. But Dan Mullen was fined $25,000. So was Lane Kiffin for tweeting something. I think that's a little ridiculous because Dan Mullen, in my opinion, kind of started that fight, whereas Lane Kiffin just retweeted a tweet. So who really knows? But let's go ahead and keep going. BYU's up to the 9. Maybe they'll try and keep moving up if there's some losses. There's going to be a loser between Georgia, Florida. There's going to be a loser between Clemson, Notre Dame. So there's going to be some shakeup next week on the top 25. And BYU keeps winning. Maybe they'll move up and be next to good old Cincinnati. Then we have Wisconsin, followed by Miami. Still kind of slipping back up there after their big loss to Clemson. Oregon's up there. Maybe Oregon and some of those other Pac-12 teams will start getting ranked pretty high. Now that they're playing, people will rank them. I don't know why we didn't just rank them from the beginning because it really doesn't matter. They'll eventually, in the end of the day, get ranked. So who really cares? And then you have Indiana all the way up to 13. I thought that was crazy. Hey, they keep winning. Keep ranking them. Who cares? Then you have Oklahoma State, Coastal Carolina, and Marshall are 15 and 16, which I really feel like, if we look later in the poll, Oklahoma, USC, Texas, Michigan, Auburn, I think they would beat Coastal Carolina, Marshall, Iowa State, SMU. Well, I guess Oklahoma didn't beat Iowa State. But I don't know. Who cares? It's just the rankings. The College Football Playoff Committee will eventually rank them, and it'll be over. And all the craziness. Then you have, Iowa State, SMU. Then you have, in the 19, Oklahoma's starting to slide back in. USC in the 20 to start their season. Boise State will be out of the polls next week. They got blown out at home. BYU's first win on the blue turf last night in a blowout fashion. So BYU looks to be strong. Boise State not in the same league as the Cougars. Then you have Texas. Michigan's in 23, fell back after their loss to Michigan State. Auburn's in 24, back in the polls after a blowout win against LSU. And then Liberty, who will play Virginia Tech today. Virginia Tech's been ranked at times during the season. Liberty is now in the 25 spot. And that's going to round it out here on our top 25 breakdown. So let's go ahead and get into our next segment. The Pac-12 preview. The 2020 Pac-12 preview, to be specific. Well, what a season. What a way. I really didn't think the Pac-12 would ever play. But hey, if everyone else is, I guess you can too. Who really cares? So the Pac-12 is back. And like we said, Pac-12 after dawn. That's right. We will have a Pac-12 after dark game today. We have Washington State and who was it? Washington State and Arizona. That's it. You have, I think Kevin Sumlin. Yes, Kevin Sumlin should be back. And then, of course, I don't even know who Washington State's head coach is. I'm not going to act like I know. I just know it's not Mike Leach, and that's sad because I don't know how much longer Mike Leach will be the coach of Mississippi State, because that has been a meltdown, to say the least. But let's go ahead and talk about the Pac-12, because that is what the segment is called, the Pac-12 preview. So, the two teams you see on my graphic are the two teams that I think will meet in Santa Clara. I think Oregon and Arizona State have the best shots from the North and South, respectively. I think Arizona State has a really strong team this year. I would definitely get excited about the Sun Devils. Herm Edwards, he has really been recruiting strong. I have been very impressed with his coaching job because, like I said, I would not have hired him. I would not have even thought to hire him. But they hired him, and I think it was great. That's why I'm not in charge. And then you have Oregon, with Mario Cristobal. They really need to be physical. That offensive line is going to be something you need to watch tonight because they had 5 seniors on that offensive line when they played Auburn, all of last season when they won the Rose Bowl. Can they get back to that physical Oregon style of offensive line and defensive line? That is something Mario Cristobal prides himself on. I think they're going to still have a strong line. I think they're going to be okay. Why? Because that is what Mario Cristobal has done his whole life until he's been the head coach of Oregon. He was an offensive line coach. So I think Oregon, they're very flashy. They have the uniforms. They're trendy. But can those Ducks be physical? And I think that kind of style for Oregon, especially led by Mario Cristobal, can help them win many more Rose Bowls and maybe get a shot in that playoff. So I think Oregon's going to have a strong team, although they're going to be, especially on the offensive end, changing out a lot. I still think they're going to be a strong team this year. And then other teams just in the Pac-12, you have Stanford. Can they kind of really get back to what they were doing kind of in year 2015? They really hadn't been the same since Christian McCaffrey left. Can USC finally get back to where they need to be? There's just a lot of teams that's like, well, maybe they can be good. Maybe UCLA and Chip Kelly will take a step. But also, I don't really know. They haven't been anything special. It feels like Washington State's going to go down. Maybe Washington can kind of come back up. Maybe make a little bit of a resurgence. They really hadn't been the same since they made their head coaching change. There was the retirement. So I really think it's just Oregon and Arizona State's divisions to lose. But we'll see. It's a crazy college football season. And in this sprint to the finish for the Pac-12, we'll see how it all ends up ending out. I have no idea. You never really know these days what's going to happen. So let's go ahead and get into our over-under segment. And we are going to start with Indiana and Michigan. The good old Wolverines. So over-under 54.5. Let's see, you would be scoring, pretty close to 30 for both teams if it was dead even. I'm going to go in the under in this one. Why? Here's why. Well, let's talk about Indiana first. Let's remember that Penn State game. Indiana, I don't think they had 200 yards of offense when they beat Penn State. They just kind of took advantage of some big-time opportunities. Penn State gifted them some good yardage, and they were able to score when they had to. But I don't think they have that good of an offense. They did beat Rutgers last week. We'll see how this Michigan defense does, but I don't think Indiana's going to score that many points. Not to say I don't think they'll win. I think they have a shot for sure at home. And then Michigan, their offense also hasn't looked very good. They weren't able to score points against Michigan State, which can be concerning. I don't think this is going to be a high-scoring game at all. Definitely one of your more classic Big Ten matchups. Then Georgia, Florida. Well, what a game we have in Jacksonville. Let's go ahead and start. Georgia, Stetson Bennett. Like I said, if Florida scores over 20, they're going to win. I'm taking the under on this one for sure. I don't think this one's very close. I think it's pretty obvious. Stetson Bennett, Georgia's offense has really not really ever hit their stride. Florida, on the other hand, has, but Georgia has the best defense in the SEC. Hands down, I don't think that's much of an argument. So the question is, will Georgia be able to score points? If Georgia can score points, they're going to win today in Jacksonville. If they can't, it looks like Florida's going to the SEC championship game for the first time since 2016. So I'm taking the under on this one. I don't think there's going to be a whole bunch of scoring in Jacksonville. Then Oregon, Stanford, over under 51. I'm going to take over on this one. I think Oregon's going to have a good offense. I know they're replacing Justin Herbert. I know they're replacing the offensive line. I think they're going to be strong. Can Stanford keep up? I don't think this is going to be too defensive of a game. I'm going to go over. I think both these teams will score a little bit over. It could be in the 30s. You could have like a 30-25 kind of game, 31-28. So I'm going to take the over in Eugene. Then you have Virginia Tech and Liberty. This is our highest over-under that I kind of saw. A lot of them were around 50-something. This is 68. I'm going to go the under because, I mean, that's kind of a... I mean, you're almost having both teams, I mean, like a 40-30 type of game. I don't think we're going to have that much scoring. I think the Liberty offense is good. Malik Willis, heard that name before, Tiger fans? Malik Willis leading that Liberty Flames offense. I mean, I think they're going to be strong, but we'll see how Virginia Tech's defense can do. Of course, they don't have Bud Foster, so we're going to see how they can scheme it up, but I don't think it's going to be that high scoring. I'm going to take the under on this one. And then Clemson Notre Dame. Over-under is right at 50. I don't think Clemson's offense is going to score too much. And then Ian Buck, you just don't really know what you're going to get. I mean, I don't know. We're going to see what will happen here. I think it's going to be a good game, but I think this could definitely be a little bit more low scoring. I think every point always counts, but I think every point's going to count in this one. It could come down to the very end. I am going to take the under on this one, but very, very close. Very, very close. I don't expect this one being like a 7-3 game. Like, I think there's going to be points to score. It's just going to be very, very close. Let's go ahead now and get into our By the Numbers segment. BTN, Big Ten Network. No, it's By the Numbers. So let's go ahead and get it started with Georgia-Florida. Probably the most historic matchup we have to talk about today. We bring out the iPad with our stats. So let's go ahead and start it off with Georgia. They've won 52 wins in the series to Florida's 43. There have been 2 ties. Georgia's currently on a 3-game win streak from 2017 to 2019. The longest win streak for both teams has been 7 games, which it's been a minute for that. Especially, I think one of the reasons Mark Richt got fired is because he couldn't beat Florida. Those were some bad Florida teams led by Will Muschamp, Jim McElwain, and he just could not win. So that's why he's probably not there anymore. But, well, he also never won a national championship, and he has some really strong teams. But all time, they're pretty dead even. Let's see. On all of our all-time stats, Florida has more national championships with 3. Georgia hasn't won one since when, everybody? 1980. All-time record, Georgia leads with a .656. And then, bowl record, bowl games, most of those stats go to Georgia. But Georgia does lead the all-time series by 9 games, 52 to 43. Then we'll keep going on our By the Numbers segment with Clemson and Notre Dame. Well, they have only played 4 times ever. The last time they played was in the college football playoff. Clemson beat them pretty bad with a win of 30-3 in Arlington, Texas. Before that, we had the game in 2015. That was the BYOG Bring Your Own Gets game for Clemson fans. Clemson won 24-22 in the rain. And Clemson brought their own guts. We'll see if they can do that today on the road in South Bend. So Clemson's currently on a 3-game win streak because the other 2 games were in the 70s. So Clemson leads all time 3-1. Clemson on a 3-game winning streak from 2018. They played in 15, and then all the way back in 1979 was Clemson's last one before that. All-time stats, other than conference championships, which Notre Dame doesn't have any because they're not a conference, and actually in bowl game stats, Clemson leads. But other than that, as you would suspect, Notre Dame leads most of the all-time stats because they are one of the all-time programs in college football. And then our next one on By the Numbers, kind of a classic and clearly, according to the stats, back-and-forth Big 12 matchup, Michigan State and Iowa. Definitely one of the games I remember from this series is when they played in Indianapolis in 2015, that Big Ten championship game. It was number 4 versus number 5. It was pretty much a quarterfinal for the college football playoff. Michigan State won 16-13. If you remember, Michigan State went on that 10-minute, 90-yard drive and won the game. Definitely a big-time game. Iowa, oh no, they had to go to the Rose Bowl because they lost, which I'm sure the Rose Bowl didn't like that. But Michigan State's on a 3-game winning streak. These teams don't play too much. They've won in 13, 15, and then 17. But all-time series, Iowa leads 23-22 with 2 ties. Longest win streak for the Hawkeyes was 5 games to Michigan State's 3 games. And in the all-time stats, Michigan State leads most of them except for Iowa has 13 conference championships. Iowa also has gone to 33 bowl games to Michigan State's 29. And Iowa has 1 Heisman winner. Michigan State does not have any. So that is that for Iowa and Michigan State. And then the big-time Pac-12 game tonight, Oregon and Stanford. I'm a little surprised. Stanford leads the all-time series 49-33 with one tie. Oregon on a one-game win streak in 2019. Stanford's longest win streak in this series, 11 games. Oregon's was 7, kind of in those early 2000s. And then in the all-time series or stats, most of these are tied. The Heisman's tied with 1 for both teams. Let's see. Oregon leads in most of the bowl game stats, the all-time records, national championships. Oregon has 0. So, Stanford does lead this series to some extent. Oregon's won a lot of them as of late. Definitely a big-time matchup just about every year in the Pac-12 North. So that's going to do it for our By the Numbers segment. And we're going to get on into Bingham's Boom. So for those of you that maybe haven't watched this before, what we do in Bingham's Booms is we pick the best game from each time slot of the college football day, and we give a big old boom to either the offense, defense, or special teams who we really think is going to show out today. So let's go ahead and get started with that early time slot game. And I'm going to start it off our best game of this early time slot, the big noon game on Fox. That's right. In the LA Coliseum, Arizona State, USC number 20 in the country, Arizona State, not ranked, but I think Arizona State is going to win this Pac-12 South. I think Arizona State's offense, coached by Herm Edwards, I think they're going to be really strong this year. I think they're a team to beat. Their coming out party, especially for that freshman quarterback, now a sophomore, was against Oregon when they pretty much told Oregon, sorry, you're not going to the playoffs this year, which, they went to the Rose Bowl and won it, so is it really that bad? So I'm going to give a big old boom to Arizona State's offense. I think Arizona State is going to get a big-time win. And then our middle of the day game, the SEC on CBS, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Maybe it'll be a virtual cocktail party. I don't really know how you do that. We have Georgia, Florida, a top 10 showdown. We're going to call it, I've said it all day today, the SEC East Championship game. Nobody's going to catch the winner of this one. You'll see this team in Atlanta, the winner of today's game. And I am going to give a big old boom to that Florida offense. I think Florida's offense, it's strength on strength in this game. You have Georgia's defense, Florida's offense. Those are those two teams' best things. But then Florida's had a crummy defense, Georgia's had a crummy offense. So it's whose weakness cannot be a weakness today. And I'm going to go, I think Florida's defense is really going to show up, but I think that Florida offense is going to surprise some people. Georgia has a good defense, but I think Kyle Trask and the Gators are going to get a big old boom, and I think the Gators have a big-time win. And then the game of the day tonight in South Bend, Clemson, Notre Dame, a big-time matchup. It's hard to even pick against the Clemson Tigers because they've just won so many big games recently. Well, I'm going to have to give a big old boom to Ian Book and that Fighting Irish offense because I think they're going to put up a lot of points, and I think it's going to be a lot for Clemson to try to keep up scoring. So I'm going to give a big old boom to round out the day to that offense of Notre Dame, Ian Book specifically. I think it's going to be a big-time game for sure. So let's talk about the Patrick Party for a little bit, and then we're going to make our picks live here on the show this morning as we round out the Patrick Party pregame show. So let's go ahead and get this thing started. Today we're going to have our Patrick Party video. We won't tell you where that location's from yet. It'll be a surprise. But we're going to make our picks. We'll also have our SEC polls on our Instagram and Facebook stories. You can vote for that. Of course, you can share the link to this if you want anyone else to watch our pregame show before the games kick off in a couple of hours. So you've got time if you want to rewatch any of our segments. Then tomorrow we'll have our NFL Primetime with Patrick. We'll pick all the games in the NFL. Well, you can also vote for them on our Instagram and Facebook polls. Of course, PatrickParty.com, where you can find anything and everything about the Patrick Party. And then a little bit of a shout out. I will start the broadcasting for Auburn High School's basketball teams on AHS Mass Media's YouTube page. The Tigers started a big basketball season. We'll be doing all the home games, and we'll start this Monday, probably around 4:15, 4:30. There are 3 games, JV, girls varsity, and guys varsity. So that's just something else you can watch as we go through this week if you're getting sick of watching the news and hearing about the election. So let's go ahead and get into our picks for today, and let's go ahead and get it started. So, welcome into the Patrick Party pregame show. It's time to make our picks here on this college football Saturday. Let's go ahead and get started with the big game down in the Big Ten. Well, Michigan lost last week. Indiana's undefeated. A big game in Bloomington, a ranked matchup in Bloomington and Memorial Stadium. Fox Sports 1 to kick off the day. I think it's going to be a big game, but I think the Wolverines will hand the Hoosiers their first loss of the season. I think Jim Harbaugh, there's been a lot of talk about him this whole week. I think they're going to get a big win for the Wolverines. Then a big one to kick off the Pac-12. Pac-12 after dawn. That's right. It's not after dark this year. It's after dawn because it's going to be 9 o'clock local time when USC kicks off with Arizona State in LA Memorial Coliseum on the Big Noon game on Fox. It's going to be a big one. I like Arizona State big in this game. I've said it a couple times today. I like the Sun Devils. I think they might even win the Pac-12 South and have a date with the Ducks in Santa Clara later this season. Then we have Texas, West Virginia, a big-time matchup. I'm going to go big for Texas. Texas, I think, is finally kind of finding their stride. I just don't think Neil Brown's team will have enough on the road in Darrell K. Texas Memorial Stadium. Then you have Iowa, Michigan State, a physical Big Ten matchup. I think Michigan State's going to keep rolling, but I'm going to take Iowa in this one. Although Michigan State's riding high, Iowa, I don't think they've won a game yet. I'm going to go Hawkeyes big. Iowa, they're a real physical team, and I like the Hawkeyes big on ESPN to kick off the day. Then, one of the games of the day on the SEC on CBS Game of the Week. You have Georgia, Florida, 5-8, a big-time matchup. It's strength on strength, weakness on weakness between that Florida offense, Georgia defense, and then that Georgia offense and Florida defense. So we're going to see who can prevail. I think, George Pickens is not going to be at the game. That didn't change my pick. I'm still picking the Gators big in Jacksonville, and we'll see them in Atlanta. Then you have Kansas State, Oklahoma State, a big-time matchup in the Big 12 on Fox. Number 14 in the land, Oklahoma State needs a win to kind of keep the Big 12's playoff hopes alive. I like the Cowboys big in this one. Then South Carolina, Texas A&M, a big game in Williams-Brice Stadium. I think the Aggies keep rolling. I do think Kelly Mond will struggle against Will Muschamp's defense, but I like the Aggies big in this one as they try to keep just kind of competing, maybe even for a playoff spot, but don't tell them that. And then you have the game of the day, Clemson, Notre Dame, 1 versus 4 on the Notre Dame Stadium, NBC, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. Trevor Lawrence won't be there. Everybody knows that. I think Notre Dame will upset Clemson. I just don't think Clemson's going to be able to score enough points. They really struggled last week, and I know we probably shouldn't compare the two. I think Clemson's going to come out ready, but I think Notre Dame, I said it in my Saturday statements, will have the lead in the fourth quarter. I think Ian Book, a seasoned quarterback, it's not going to be a hostile environment on the road, but I like Brian Kelly's squad in this one, but don't expect too much movement in the polls. I think people will give Clemson the benefit of the doubt because Trevor Lawrence isn't there. We'll probably see a rematch of this in the ACC championship game. And then the Pac-12 is back, the headline of today. The number 12 Oregon Ducks will take on the Stanford Cardinals in Eugene, ABC Saturday Night Football. The final game of today. It's going to be a big-time matchup, but I like the Ducks big in this one. I like them to win the Pac-12 North because the Pac-12 is back. Well, that's going to be it from the Patrick Party. That's going to be it from the Patrick Party pregame show. Enjoy your college football weekend.